We're going live in 5 seconds. You're good to go.
Okay. Good afternoon, everyone. On behalf of the Universidad Pedagógica Nacional Francisco Morazán, I would like to extend a warm welcome to all of you joining us today for this conference. We are thrilled to have you here and appreciate your time and participation. Throughout this conference, we encourage you to engage, ask questions, and share your thoughts in the chat feature. It is with great pleasure that I stand before you today as we prepare to welcome 3 exceptional individuals in exploring multiliteracy with post-pandemic learners. Each of them brings a unique perspective and a wealth of experience that will undoubtedly enrich our understanding. Without further ado, let's begin by introducing our first distinguished speaker, Suzanne Rajkumar, holds a master's degree in applied linguistics and TESOL. She's an innovator and a CBC codebreaker ESL game, teacherpreneur, broadcaster in Mujeres con Propósito 11, a 2019 TESOL International Ambassador, local assistant coordinator, Action TESOL Caribbean in Trinidad and Tobago, ex-president and past vice president too of Honduras TESOL with over 29,000 teaching hours focused on meaningful learning using a multisensory pedagogy with a student-centered approach. Thank you for being with us today. We also have the privilege of hearing from Miguel Pena Flores, who is a multilingual Peruvian ecological activist, implementer of Alpha Disruptive Literacy Programs from India in Iquitos, Peru, and NGO leader of a carrera. He drives their mission to educate by engaging authorities, building partnerships, and organizing collaborative meetings with national and international stakeholders, leads marketing and social media campaigns together with strategic partners in Norway to raise awareness about the Amazon rainforest and the indigenous peoples who live within. He's fluent in Spanish, English, Norwegian, and thank you for being with us today. And finally, it's my pleasure to introduce Tom Delaney, multilingual author and co-author of several publications, founder and program manager, medical entitlements literacy assistance, founder and program manager, Lucknow, India, literacy program consultant in trainer at Global Dream, Lucknow, India, volunteer research at Beyond Zero Emissions, Brisbane, Australia, 2014, deep experience and understanding of urban poverty in northern India, broad knowledge of global policy issues and debates, significant experience interacting with Indian government, bureaucracy, NGOs, and other international organizations, fluent in English, Hindi, and Urdu. Thank you, Mr. Delaney. Now, this space is yours. Please enjoy the conference.
Thank you very much. Thank you to the National University, Pedagogical University for inviting us. And We have organized our presentation today with some questions and to discuss multiliteracy among us, and we want to share that with you. So David, if you can help us with the first video, we will get started right away. Miguel and I will be here to answer your questions after.
No problem. Give me 1 second.
David, there's no audio. David, if you can hear me, there's no audio coming across on the video. Well, on my side, I'm not hearing anything. Is anyone else? Can you add in the chat box if you're hearing the audio from the video? Okay, so Miguel is not hearing audio either.
I can hear you. Audio?
No, not me, but the video. Were you able to hear the
Oh.
video?
No.
Okay, hang on. Give me 1 second. For a better experience, we're going to play video by video without interruption.
Hello and welcome to Multiliteracy Strategies in the Post-Pandemic Classroom. Thank you to the National Pedagogical University for the invitation, and we're really happy to be here. Today, we're going to have a series of short videos where we're going to answer some multiliteracy strategy questions. I have joining me Thomas Delaney from India. He's of Australian descent and was born in India. Miguel Pena Flores. He is Peru and uses Norwegian and English as well. And I'm Suzanne Rajkumar from in Honduras, but I'm from Trinidad and Tobago. Colin Baker said, bilinguals help preserve the variety and therefore the beauty in diversity of our world. Bilinguals are environmentally friendly people. So you're going to hear a little bit about that. And in this beautiful collaborative experience, you're going to get to learn a little more about that. So let's start. Here's a little bit about my linguistic repertoire. What I mean by linguistic repertoire, English, I use it for communication, work, and entertainment. As you can see in my name, it's Rajkumar and Martinez. I'm married to a Latino. So there's Spanish, obviously. I studied French. My children are learning Japanese. And Hindi is also part of my generational elements. So all of these add up to the different kinds of words that influence the languages that I speak and how I use them. So today we want to ask Thomas and Miguel to share with us, what does their linguistic repertoire look like as multiliterate users of the language? Do you know which languages make up your linguistic repertoire? Thomas, can you begin?
Sure, Suzanne. Thanks for having me on, and thank you everybody for being here. It's terrific to be able to spend time with you virtually and to discuss a topic that's so fascinating and dear to our hearts, that of multiliteracy, being multilingual. So for me, I speak 3 languages: English, Hindi, and Urdu. And I've just put the name of each language up here so that you can see the different scripts. So I'm sure you're all familiar with English. You're reading English there. Then the second language there is Hindi, and the third language is Urdu on the far right. So just to give you a brief overview, it's very interesting that English is spoken by about 1.5 billion speakers around the world. And of those, 400 million or so are first language speakers. This, of course, was spread around the world through British colonialism. Now, Hindi and Urdu are 2 major Indian languages. And interestingly, with Hindi, even though it's only really spoken in India and then parts of the world where lots of Indians have moved, it's got almost as many first language speakers as English. This was a surprise to me when I first read it. But yeah, there it is. There's, because across North India, Hindi is by and large the mother tongue. And so it's an Indo-Aryan language. It has Sanskrit roots. And Urdu, interestingly, has a lot of shared vocabulary with Hindi. So in other words, when I'm speaking to people on the street here, I mix the Hindi and Urdu, right? We have a mix we call Khichdi or Hindustani, which is just, it's not so much formal Hindi nor formal Urdu, but it's those 2 mixed together. That's kind of the common dialect. And the very interesting thing about Urdu script is it's written from right to left. It's more has Arabic and Persian roots. So it shares a lot of vocabulary with Hindi. The script is totally different. And interestingly, Urdu is the most common language for many Muslims in India. So it has a long Islamic heritage. So yeah, just that gives you just a brief overview. Very interesting, these 3 different languages, three different stories to how those languages are being used in India, and also how they're being used in my life. Obviously, English is my mother tongue. I speak English with my parents and with my friends in Australia. But in day-to-day life in India, I don't speak too much English. I mainly speak in a mix of Hindi and Urdu.
Tom, I have a question for you. I have a question for you, Tom. What about your Australian English and the English that's spoken in India? What about that? Would you see them as different or similar or varieties? What is that experience been like?
That's a really good point, Suzanne. I'm glad you picked up on that. Because if I'm speaking to you in my Indian accent, like this is close to my Indian accent, in this accent, I'm very much understandable by a lot of my Indian friends, but some of my Australian friends struggle to understand me. And then conversely, if I were to speak to you in my Australian accent, you'd find it very different from my Indian accent. And when I was back in Australia a few years ago and traveling through rural Australia, I found it kind of difficult to understand some of those folk in rural Australia because their accent was so different. It was such a strong Australian twang.
Yeah, I can imagine.
Yes, definitely. It's a very different accent, and to some extent different vocabulary and different grammar as well. So it is interesting that English, being such a global language, has so many different. You could even maybe say different dialects of English, perhaps.
Oh, we could spend all day discussing this, Tom.
Yes.
Definitely. It's very, very
I'm really interested to hear from Miguel too, though, because Miguel has...
Yes, I want our audience that's listening to us, for them to take into consideration what Tom mentioned about the change in accent. I know that many language learners tend to be very conscientious about their accent, but diversity can be very interesting. So let's look at Miguel's linguistic repertoire now. Thank you, Tom.
Hola a todos, buenos días, buenas tardes, buenas noches. Hello everybody. Yes, I want to comment, Susan, about which language I can speak and can communicate. Spanish, of course, English, and Korean language, because I used to live in this country many years ago. And I had the opportunity to study social and environmental education there. And also working and living in this country, which I learned a lot. My typical day is like, I wake up, I talk to my family in the morning, to my partners in the morning, and then during the day, I go online, I communicate with people from around the world in English, and then after that, I use my English skills to make documentation, to make plans and so on. And after that, I want to watch a movie in English, for example, in Netflix, and then after relax my mind, I can use this to learn something about what is going on in this part of the world, in this country, Norway. Sometimes I read the news in the local language to understand more, or I talk to people, friends, which are working with together. Sometimes we use the common local language, which is Norwegian, which I can understand somehow. And also, I come from Peru. You can imagine that we have many languages, local language or native languages. So for me, it's normal to use, for example, Wawa. Wawa is a child here in Peru, probably in your country too. So there is Wawa, there is Pachamama. Pachamama is a very well-known word. So you know that it means Mother Earth. So this is a very special word for Latin America. You probably know it. So I think that to connect to people, to understand each other, to communicate, and to learn from each other through different language is the key to find different solutions to different problems that we have already: climate change, food supply, and other problems. That's all I can comment on until now.
Well, I have a question for you, Miguel, and you said something very interesting. You mentioned that to relax your mind, you relax using English. So I was wondering, and it occurred to me because I know sometimes I also compartmentalize different things when I want to disconnect or I want to change or switch my mind. So when you use Spanish, is that your thinking language for analysis? Like, what is your language? Which language do you use do you analyze in all of the languages? Or do you have like a particular language for planning activities, thinking, innovative? Or do you do a mix of it? Have you perceived that difference?
Mm-hmm. Yes, it depends who I talk with. For example, most of the people I talk with is in English, so I need to think in English. But also I use English for relaxing, to watching movies or listening to music. So mostly I use English for analyze and relaxing. And the Spanish language is my native language, so that means that I can relax. I can also work. It's no problem.
You can philosophize. You can do everything.
Yeah, exactly. It can be many things. Yes.
Yeah, that's awesome. Thank you very much. So we're going to go to the moderator right now, and we're going to ask you in our audience to comment with us in the chat box about what does your linguistic repertoire look like? And we'll be back with you with our question number 2.
Okay. So hi, everyone. We've got a couple of minutes before we move on to our next question. We asked you, I added to the chat box, if you could add what your linguistic repertoire looks like. Because today in 2023, and if anything coming out of the pandemic, what we have seen is that many people started connecting. The internet allowed us to connect with different cultures. And right now, the collaboration between Thomas, Miguel, and myself is a representation of what our students, our future students will be doing, even some of us as educators. So I don't see anything written. Is there anyone that would like to turn on their microphone and share? Have you ever considered what your linguistic repertoire looks like? What languages do you speak? How many languages? What kind of music do you listen to? What sort of phrases influence the language that you use? Okay, so everyone's very quiet. So you can participate in the chat box. Okay, so let's see who's going to break the ice. And well, okay, let's see a show of hands then. You can use your reactions. Everyone that's here basically is using English. And I would imagine that English and Spanish. Do you have more than 2 languages in your linguistic repertoire? If you have more than 2 languages, can you use the little emoji for the hand? More than 2 languages? If a little bit of French, okay, thank you, Fabiola. Thank you very much. Even if it's a little bit, it's not about what languages are looking at now is that proficiency is not about sounding perfect like a native speaker. You have, with the influence of K-pop and kids singing Korean pop music, anime, Japanese, and all these different languages, you find that our communities, our society, we are developing multiple ways of exploring multiple languages. Is there anyone, apart from Fabiola, that speaks another language? Or maybe are familiar with any of the indigenous languages in Honduras? Anyone speak Garifuna? Maybe any of the phrases? No? Even if the little phrases, and this is something Miguel and I and Tom, we talked about, is that even if it's in my country of Trinidad and Tobago, when we talk about the food or the cuisine, it is incredible how many words are in it. And when you have a multiliterate mindset, it opens the doors to so much exploration and so much context building. So let's go to our second video then, if there are no more questions. And I would like you guys to consider your linguistic repertoire. Karen Viana, thank you, Karen. A couple Korean words. I imagine so. There are lots of Korean soap operas and Turkish soap operas that are invading Netflix in Honduras. So that sort of popularity, whether you are aware of it on a conscious level, but your brain is picking up those language statistics. And when it's picking up those language statistics, it makes it very interesting what sort of activities you respond to. So David, do you have our second question video?
Yes, right now.
Okay. I see Karen is sharing a little more with us. Okay, so we'll come back to Karen's comments after.
Hi, and now welcome to question 2, multiliteracy strategies in the post-pandemic classroom. Why does multiliteracy matter? For this question, we go to Miguel Pena in Peru with us. Miguel, why does multiliteracy matter?
Hello, everybody. Hola. Hello. Good morning from Peru. Yes, I want to say that it's very important now, multiliteracy, because nowadays we need to communicate with people from different places in the world. We need to learn from each other, to understand each other, to do actions together, to have actions together. And also we need to show empathy for the other person so we can understand their own context. So I think that it's the most important to understand, to have empathy, and to follow actions together. Nowadays, we can study together online, we can do projects together, and we can do many things in the digital world. But also we need to have empathy for the other person. And multiliteracy is very important nowadays because it shows respect to the other person. So I think that's very important to put key in education and communication, this concept.
Thank you very much, Miguel. And in your experience with this, speaking the different languages, I mean, you've actually done this, right?
Yes, I do it every day in my life right now.
Excellent, excellent. Now let's move to India with Tom Delaney and a little bit about Tom. Next slide. Why multiliteracy, Tom? What's your take on this?
Yeah, thanks, Suzanne, and thanks, Miguel. I think I basically agree with everything Miguel said, and it's interesting how the same things play out in different cultures. So I think, multiliteracy really allows us to connect across those cultural barriers. I find as a foreigner in India, many of my foreign friends here, because they've only been here for a few months or a few years, they can't connect as much with local friends because they can't speak in their mother tongue. And many people in India don't speak English. So I think it's also a matter of respect, as well as allowing us to connect. It allows us to show respect when we can speak to somebody in their mother tongue. They really feel respected, that we've actually taken the effort to learn their language rather than expecting them to learn our language.
Yeah.
So that allows us to build that deeper relationship. Because, of course, there's only so many things that you can express in a second or a third language if you're not as fluent in it. So when you speak to somebody in their mother tongue, that allows that deeper relationship. I think also if you zoom out and look at the big picture, we look at the history of colonialism, right? There's a lot of language colonialism as well. So, of course, I love English. English is my mother tongue. English is allowing us to have this conversation today across these different cultures and different places. But English was spread around the world through the British Empire. And the British have a lot to answer for in terms of imposing their language and suppressing native language and saying, you must speak English in school and must learn English. If you want to be an educated person, if you want to be a respectable person, you must learn English. So I disagree with that. I think as educators, we should support mother tongue literacy, and we should support everybody to be able to learn their origin language, their identity language. And we need to respect that rather than trying to impose our language on them. And I guess the final point I would make, a bit different from the earlier points, is that there's a big variety of cognitive benefits to being multilingual. So I experienced this myself a little bit. I experienced that, sometimes I'm thinking of a word and it doesn't come to me in English, it comes to me in Hindi. And as humans, we're social animals, and we've developed our socialization through language, through being able to communicate with each other. So just to cite a few studies, there have been a lot of studies on the benefits of multilingualism over being a single language speaker. But one of the benefits is reducing the onset of cognitive decline. So dementia, Alzheimer's, obviously these are huge issues. Being multilingual can help delay the onset of cognitive decline. It also helps you think more flexibly, more creatively. So I experienced that. I think lots of people listening to us who are multilingual will also experience that thinking about something in a different language can help you think about it in a different angle, essentially. So I think there's lots of benefits to being multilingual, and it's terrific to have the opportunity to work across different cultures and to speak different languages. It's just a fantastic opportunity.
Wow, thank you, Tom. And I agree wholeheartedly in the references that Tom has here on this slide presenting. There's one at the bottom that speaks about thinking in a foreign tongue reduces decision biases. I can say that definitely. I have experienced that being here in Honduras and coming from a different country. It really does open your mind. And in the book by Joran Amundsen, The World of Sophia, he mentions there's one chapter where he talks about if everyone could learn a foreign language, there would be no war. And I think it wraps in very beautifully with, not just one language, but if you could, take it further and more, how many more connections to connect to what Miguel said, the building of those deeper relationships that allow us to be here. So we want to take this question now, and we want to ask you in the audience to share with us in the chat box. We're going to come back to you guys now and wonder what has been your experience with multiliteracy and what do you think about what we've represented right now? So we're going to get back to you. Thank you.
Okay, so we're back to you guys. So there's the question. Have you contemplated or have you experienced students using phrases or elements of multiliteracy in your classrooms? Even if it comes from the influence of movies, because I've been in Honduras for a couple of years, and I can say one thing that I recognize, and I don't know if you've noticed it, but the influence of Colombian and Mexican phrases from popular narco novelas. When those kinds of narco novelas are very popular, there tends to be an influx of young people using the terms parce, and they would be using different terms when they refer to their friends, and it influences your social language. So it changes the context. Miguel mentioned the term wawa. He mentioned the term Pachamama in South America and referring to Mother Earth and different terminologies. When you think of the drinks and the food in your country, one of the things with studying one language over the years, there was a lot of oppression. And now in the 21st, entering into the 21st century, we get to recognize side by side the legitimacy and the respect for all of our languages. Respect for Castellano, respect for Spanish, respect for English, respect for all languages. So what has been your experience? Would anyone like to share? Fabiola?
Yes, I have some students in my class which they listen to songs in English and then they are losing like probably like colloquial language or slangs from the songs.
Yeah.
And then, so that's what I can say about it. And it's really funny to see them. They come to me and they ask me, what does this mean? And then I have to explain them that sounds are not really like academic language, that they must like learn that we have like different ways to say things. And that's my experience with students.
Right. So what we want to look at in terms of multiliteracy strategies is that before there was always this defined academic line in how we bring the language into the classroom. And now the whole idea of multiliteracy strategies is, can we bring the music in? Can we bring the movies in? Can we bring these different elements and expand on context, expand on interculturalization, expand on learning about different ways and how we connect as human beings, as global citizens, in different elements like that. Is there anyone else who would like to share? Have you had a multiliterate experience in your classroom? Are you struggling with someone who does not speak the language? No? Okay. Now, the idea of bringing multiliteracy, based on what Tom and Miguel and they shared, do you have any questions? Miguel is here with us. I know Miguel is going to have to leave in a little while. Are there any questions that you have that you would like to ask Miguel on his experience as a multiliterate learner and user? Because for me, this is the future of education. We can be reading multiple elements of books, comparing data, writing essays where we are quoting something in one language and expressing what the context is. It's taking our critical thinking at a whole different level. So I would like to invite the audience again. Are there any questions that you would like to ask?
Yes, in my case, I would like to know how to deal with these situations in classroom. And how can we help students to understand, as you said, like language in daily life and then language in any other setting?
Miguel, perhaps you can take this question in terms of, as a learner of multiple languages, what worked for you?
Well, I can talk about my experience in Iquitos, in the Amazon city of Peru. I saw that the children, students, they like to have interaction. They like to communicate. And I see that they are very eager to learn something new. So I think that the most important is to keep the motivation to study, because every week I see how the students, they are open to learn. But if we can stimulate, motivate them with something new, something innovative, it can be a good process, so they can have more motivation to do actions. Because in the pandemic, we remember the pandemic, everything was static. And also we understood that we need to communicate. So now we can communicate with people from around the world, with children from around the world through internet. That's my
Miguel,
answer.
there's
Yes.
another question. What would be your advice for learning different languages? What worked for you?
For me, when I was a teenager, a little guy, I wanted to travel to a new country and to learn about the culture, about the local language. So I found a way to travel to Norway. And I was very interested to learn this language and the culture, how they think, how the mentality. So I moved to this country and I saw how it is there. The most important is to keep the interest to learn something and know.
Thank you. If we connect back to the first question where we talked about linguistic repertoire, for example, my boys, I have two boys, my sons look at anime. So the anime community and culture tends to be, a lot of it is in Japanese. So they tend to streamline. So what I tend to do, especially when it comes to different languages, is I sort of connect the languages to passion. What are they passionate about? If they like music when they were babies, I used to maintain French in terms of song and music, so that they would be acutely aware of the sounds of French and little songs, and maintain that with them, so that if they wanted to continue it, that they could. And I tend to tie it into different habits. So like, for example, if you see, there are strategies where there are educators that use movie trailers, and there's so many different movie trailers in different languages that are on YouTube that you can access. If you can get like dynamic movie trailers in a different language, and then you ask your students, what do you think they're saying? Because sometimes when we see old movies that were martial arts movies like Bruce Lee and Jackie Chan and those kinds of movies, you would hear one voice speaking in English or in Spanish, and the voice did not match the character that was actually acting. And a lot of it would be kind of funny. But imagine bringing that activity actually into the classroom and sharing this. Look at their faces. What do you think they're saying? Looking at the gestures. And that brings the whole cultural idea of how are gestures different in different countries. For example, in Honduras, many people use the gesture of showing things using your lips. So you get like, it's over there. And when you do that, but in other cultures, that's seen as a kiss. And it's not necessarily, but they can identify Honduran migrants because of that simple gesture. So sometimes something that's normal for you in a completely different setting has a completely different meaning. I have read stories of educators that would do like this, bye-bye. And this simple gesture of bye-bye actually is like come in a different language. So the way that you put your hand and the way that you do things, they're all part of learning how we communicate, that connectivity that we look for. Karen, Vienna, I see your hand is up.
Yes, this is a question for Miguel Pena. I'm just curious about it. How long do you take to learn those 4 languages that you speak now?
Well, English when I was a student in the school, and Norwegian language. I live in this country, and I was in the school there, and I was learning there for 2 years, 1 year almost in this school. So because I was interested, I wanted to learn about the language. So my motivation was to learning, to be open to this new language. I hope it's answer for you this.
But that was for English only, right?
For both, for English, I always wanted to watch movies in English. I wanted to listen music in English. I wanted to speak with people from different places in English. So that was before social media, probably. So
But how many languages do you speak?
English and Norwegian language. I can understand Swedish, Danish, and of course I speak Spanish, so I can understand a little Italian and Portuguese and so on. But yes.
So in general, do you think that do you take like 4 or 5 years learning these languages?
Because I was interested, maybe 3 years. 3 years.
Okay.
Yes, maybe less, because I like to watch movies in English. I like to listen music in English too. I like to I was open to have entertainment in English when I was younger. So yeah, yes.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you, Karen. Another strategy also as an educator in high school, I remember I had some college boys that were a little rebellious, and the only way that I could negotiate for them to behave in the class, I said, if you behave, I will teach you guys to be gentlemen and how to speak French. So they like the idea of learning French in order to sound sophisticated. So I used French to get them to engage in the sense. And then they were like, what are you teaching the kids? And they would actually go out and use but if they had to behave in the class. So there were different ways to introduce that, expand that part of our brain, because there's enough studies that demonstrates us that a bilingual and a multiliterate brain, the muscle is bigger, we are thinking more, we're doing more. So there, as Thomas mentioned in his presentation, there's so many cognitive benefits associated with it. David, can we go to question number 3?
Right away.
Hi, so welcome back. Now we're on to our question number 3 for our multiliterary strategies. What multiliterary strategies work in your experiences? For this, Tom and Miguel are going to have a little something prepared for you. And we hope you enjoy this question, because we're going to have a lot of questions when we get back to the moderating room with you. Okay, Tom, take it away.
So thanks, Suzanne. And I think as we were just discussing, and we heard from you in the chat, multiliteracy is so important. It has so many benefits that the really key question is, well, how do we do this in our classrooms? It's all very well in theory, but what does it look like in practice? So to that end, I want to introduce this new program we've been developing in India. We call it Accelerating Learning for All, or we give it the acronym ALPHA, ALFA, ALPHA, Accelerating Learning for All. So a shout out to my boss, Dr. Sunita Gandhi, who's been working on this program. And Sunita actually has a workshop in this same conference. So we'll post the link to that in the chat. And I do encourage you to check out her presentation as well. But just to give you a very brief overview of what Alpha is about and how that connects to multiliteracy. It's a very swift literacy program because in India we have a huge problem with many kids not being able to read and write in their own mother tongue. Let alone in a second or third language. We have a huge problem with illiteracy. So in this program, children work in pairs and they're taking turns to ask each other questions and respond. So this is a big contrast to the traditional approach to education in India, is for a teacher to give a lecture. So if I was the teacher, I'd be telling the whole class and they would be repeating after me very often, which, as we know, as educators, is not a very good pedagogy. It's not a good form of education for kids to just be repeating or rote learning. So instead in Alpha, kids are working in pairs and they're asking each other questions, responding, and they're building from known to unknown, which means from a picture to sound to word. And through this process, they're learning to read very swiftly. So if I just give a very quick demonstration, if Miguel will oblige me. So I hope you guys can all see on the right side of my screen a little some picture tiles, letters, and word. So Miguel, what's the first picture you see there?
Oh, well, I see a car there.
Yeah, great. It's a car. So what's the first sound of car?
Car. Oh, yes.
Car.
Car.
Exactly.
Yes.
That's right.
Mm-hmm.
And then what's the next picture you see?
I see apple.
Great. And what's the first sound of apple? Great. And what's the final picture you see?
I see a tube. So, yeah, tube.
Okay. Great. And what's the first sound of tub?
Tub. Yep.
Okay, great. So then these three sounds, ka, a, ta, what do they join together to make?
I can read cat.
Great job. Nice.
Mm-hmm.
So you can see in that little role play, that little acting we did, this is how it looks in the Alpha classroom. You can see on this photo on the left, these two kids are doing this with each other. That's in Hindi language. They're asking each other these questions and responding. And now the two kids working together in a pair, they would then swap roles. So for one word, I would be asking Miguel the questions and he'd be responding. Then for the next word, he'd be asking me. The same way, all of the kids in the classroom, they're all highly engaged because they're working with their partners in pairs. So in terms of multiliteracy, I really want to highlight this aspect of the Alpha program, which is that it involves randomly pairing children. So India is a highly diverse country. There's lots of different religions, lots of different cultures, but often kids from one religion may not actually know kids from another religion or not know kids from another culture, because it's easy, as we know, in the social media age, it's very easy to be in our own bubble right? It's the same in Indian society. There's the different bubbles of different castes, different religions, and people may not be relating so much across those barriers. So in Alpha, we try to make it the classroom a melting pot. By randomly pairing children, so it means I say as a Hindu child, one day I'll be sitting next to a Muslim friend, right? One day I'll be sitting next to a Sikh friend, another day with a Christian friend. I'll be mixing kids across economic barriers, across cultural barriers, linguistic barriers. All of this builds empathy. It means we're used to relating with others who are different from us. It is absolutely crucial as we're talking about developing 21st century skills like citizenship and character, collaboration, communication. And these are not skills that can be taught from a textbook, right? They can't be taught by just listening to a teacher lecture. And these are crucial skills in terms of multiliteracy, because multiliteracy is all about being able to connect with those who are different from us. And so that's why Alpha uses this random pairing approach, which is very effective both in terms of teaching reading and writing and these literacy skills, and also very effective in terms of the multiliteracy skills of being able to connect with others at a human-to-human level. Final thing I want to add there is that for the SDGs, the Sustainable Development Goals, we've got SDG 4, which is the education goal, the goal of quality education for all by 2030, which is absolutely crucial. But along with that, so many other SDGs, if you're looking at SDGs around sustainability, SDGs around peace and justice and ending poverty, all of these things will only be possible if we really bring our education system into the 21st century, which means an education system that builds empathy, builds connection, builds communication skills by our students. So we're not saying that Alpha is the only answer. There's obviously lots and lots of fantastic programs out there, but I would encourage you to check out this program and see if it could work in your context, this paired learning approach. And in fact, I would like to ask Miguel, because Miguel has recently been using this program in your context in Peru. So I'm really interested to hear from you as to how it's going in your classrooms.
Yes, Tom. Yes, nowadays we're implementing Alpha project in 2 schools in Iquitos, Peru. We have communication with the teachers, and they are very happy with this innovation program, because now students are learning faster than before. The problem with the Amazon rainforest is that many students stop having education. With this new door, they can learn faster. And the most important, that they are learning from each other, because they're having interaction in pairs, and they may question each other. We see that it's getting progress. It's very crucial to do this, to have numbers, because now with the global changes in education and information, we need to learn faster. And Alpha is the right piece in this maze to get the goal of education approach.
Thank you very much, Miguel and Tom, for enlightening us. And as Tom mentioned before, Dr. Sunita Gandhi's presentation, make sure to look for it on the conference website, because whether it's before or after, she goes into depth about this program and the acceleration of it. So now we'll head back to the room and ask and see what questions you have to be able to help you with them. Thank you.
Okay, so as I was commenting in the chat box, based on some of these strategies that you saw, Dr. Gandhi would have presented. I think she was previously, you can see her presentation, and there's more evidence about what Thomas mentioned. And we're going to go to our final question that we asked. And any of your questions or comments, please do ask us, because what Thomas, Miguel, and I have demonstrated today, this in itself is something that you can do if you connect with educators around the world. You can actually create a team if another educator is willing to join classes, just one activity, whether be it a storytelling activity, a culture building activity. Tom talked about building character and all these elements. So I would like you to hear our last question, and please fill the chat box with your comments and your ideas, and Miguel and I will be answering any of them as we see them coming up. David, can we have our final question, please?
Sure, not a problem. One moment.
Thank you. building multiliteracy strategies like introducing music and different music, arts, even if it's an artwork by someone's from a different language, it helps build context. And context is very important when it comes to how we use a language. It's about whether our words hurt someone or whether our words can empower another person. When we help teach our students to recognize, look at how another language expresses love. An example I always use to show the difference in terms of levels of tolerance is the term for French for mother-in-law. They use the term ma belle-mère, my beautiful mother. And I always think the French are they're so wonderful in how they use their language. So here we go with our final question.
Hi, everyone. Wow. So I hope you guys are feeling as excited as I am. Now we're down to the roll up your sleeves part of it all. How can you apply these multiliteracy strategies in your context? And, you know, from India to Peru, we're going to start with Miguel Pena in Peru and what is happening in Iquitos, the Amazonian rainforest. Who would have thought that? Even Tom mentioned that before, you know, from India to the Amazon. Miguel, what is happening? What are your teachers saying? What do you see unraveling with the mixture of languages, the multiliteracy elements? What are you seeing?
Well, thank you, Susan, for the invitation. Yes, I want to start first how everything begins. I talked to Sunita Gandhi a few months ago, and then she showed me Alpha Project. And it was fascinating for me to see this kind of innovation in education. And I decided to follow this and to learn more about this. After talking with people in Iquitos, Peru, with teachers and school directors, I decided to implement this Alpha Project in 2 schools in Iquitos, Peru. After May, we decided to start the project, and we are having video conference. And last week, I saw progress in the children. I see interaction in the children in Iquitos, Peru, and also I saw the interest of the local teachers to engage, to continue, and to develop more this, because they find this very interesting and fascinated to do this kind of process of innovation, to make children the center and they can follow the steps themselves. And the most important, to interact each other between 2 pairs. So I see the progress, and also I saw photos and videos where children are replicating, they are having interaction, and they are having also discussion between them. For me, it was very lovely to see this, because I can say in the Amazon rainforest, the education is not very well developed. So when the Alpha came, I said, yes, let's do it. And now, right now, I see more interest, because local municipalities, they show interest in what we're doing here. We want to implement Alpha in many schools, in many places in the Amazon rainforest. So I see that this is the beginning of many things. So that's all I can say about the experience with Alpha here in Peru.
Wow, Miguel. You know, I hear you talk about the Amazonian rainforest, and action comes to mind. You know, one of the things that for me has been beautiful, I want to hear a little bit, what about the cultural impact? So we have the language and the program coming in, but in the beginning, I remember the teachers were very skeptical in the beginning, like, really? Can this work? A different language created in India. How is this relevant to the Amazonian forest? What is their attitude now culturally? And the impact in terms of getting the students to settle down to the rhythm? Like, what kind of challenges have you had?
Well, the main challenge is first the connection, internet connection. That's a big problem for us. But step by step, we are doing this. Also, the teachers at the beginning, they were skeptical about this, but we said that this is working in different countries. It can be replicated, it can be adapted, and it's so flexible too. And we can get support from India, so they can be trained, the teachers, online. So the teachers, they say yes, and the director say yes too. And this is why they follow the process and they want to continue doing this. So I see that about the local context, at the beginning it was difficult because everything I know can be critical sometimes, but to show them that it can be done, that's the key. So we show them that it can be done and it can adapt to the local context. And nowadays we have 2 schools and probably to have more territory in the Amazon rainforest soon, because local municipalities, they want this. They want improved education, and the best way to improve education is to learning grammatical and numeracy, right? So this is why I feel that if you have education, you can have a superpower because you can read more, you can learn more, you can discuss different information with people from different places in the world, and you can do different activities like projects, for example. This is what are really doing, me, Susan, and Tom.
Yeah.
Miss Suzanne, the microphone.
Sorry. I think for timing, the timing is coming to a close for us. We're on the final 5 minutes. So the video is a little longer, and I'm hoping that David will allow the video to run on the YouTube presentation that you can look at. But you can connect to us. We will make our PowerPoint presentation available for you guys so that they can post it for you to have as well the information that we shared. And most importantly, we wanted to demonstrate to you what a multi-literate encounter could be like, at least the collaboration, the future of what work could look like. And then as educators and innovators going into this 21st century, motivate you to think of all the things that you can do with connecting with educators in different countries. With Miguel, we are going to be inviting his Peruvian teachers from Iquitos in the Amazonian forest to share about their project here in Honduras. We're going to try and bring Alpha to Honduras as well. So these are collaborations that are ongoing. We are collaborating and connecting, and we want to invite all of you to see that open door and just run right through it. Research, connecting, learning, and building. So Miguel, is there anything you'd like to say as we close?
Yes, thank you all of you for being with us. I really wish you that you enjoy to this journey to know the unknown. You can experience innovation for education in your country. Thank you so much.
Okay, Miguel, if anyone wants to connect with you, can you add your email for Arcabeta? Miguel's NGO is related to climate, ecology, and as you see, this element of connecting schools in different areas. And I am working with Honduras Social. So you can look for any page related to Honduras Social. Through Honduras Social, we will be bringing the Alpha Literacy Program to Honduras. So if any of you want to collaborate, connect, even join the team and what it is we're doing, you're more than welcome to do so. So we want to extend that invitation and say thank you to each and every one of you. Thomas is probably, he's probably having a good night's sleep because it's very early in the morning for him right now. So I just want to say thank you. Thank you to all of you. Thank you, David, and thank you to the team for inviting us. I don't know if you have any questions.
Thank you so much for joining this amazing place.
You're welcome.